The Blind Tony Story. Book 3, Chapter 4. The times they were a-changing. Those were the words to a Bob Dylan song from the 1960s. And they were definitely true. The times they were a-changing. Theodor Hegel, the German philosopher, once wrote that all is flux, and flux means change. He believed that seemingly small, almost imperceptible, insignificant quantitative changes would eventually produce significant qualitative changes, given a long enough period of time. And while I don't agree with everything he wrote, I do believe that that particular statement is true. The times they were changing. A new day is dawning, people are changing. Those two were the words to another 60s song. But all was not crimson and clover, as the title implied. Everything seemed to be changing. The neighborhood was changing. My family was changing. My school changed. My friends changed. And above all else, I changed. My older sister Pat fell in love, ran off and got married. She started her own little nest. But she didn't live happily ever after. Prince Charming turned out to be a frog in disguise. And in many ways, he was just like the wolf that dressed up like Grandma. She discovered that when you're alone in the woods, there are trolls under the bridge, and you need the Tin Man and his hatchet, 'cause there's no place like home, and the wizard's really a fake. But those are stories for another time. Anyway, she met this man named Nate, who was a very lovable man, but a man who was already married to someone else. In fact, it was eventually discovered that he had multiple wives. So even though I liked him as a person, I hated what he had done to my sister. Anyway, she returned home around this time with a beautiful little baby boy named Keith, who I instantly adopted as my own little baby. Pat used to let me take him for long walks, even to Aunt Janie's house and back. Pat's return took a lot of pressure and scrutiny off my wrongdoings and various nefarious escapades. My other sister Kim had started staying out all night without authorization, and this helped also to take the pressure off me. Several times the police had to bring her home against her will. Eventually she just ran away for good. And I was the only one in the family who knew exactly where she was. I was the liaison between her and the rest of the family. And I loved and respected her too much to ever betray her secret hiding places. She lived with a man named Gerald on Rhode Island Avenue, who loved her a lot, adored her, idolized her, and Kim manipulated him in order to get her own way. I was a regular fixture at their house, especially on Friday evenings where I would be treated to vodka and orange juice cocktails and exposed to an ever-increasing repertoire of jazz music. I was still taking piano lessons at this time, and my piano teacher was a man named Mr. Garrison, Maurice Garrison, who lived on the west side, Blaine Avenue, and Kim used to take me to his house every Saturday morning for a 10 a.m. lesson. But since she was gone, I was now allowed to go to my music lessons by myself, which opened up a whole new world of exploration for me on the west side of Atlantic City. This was further from home than even Aunt Janie's house. Also, since Madison Avenue School only went up to the 5th grade, I now had to transfer to New Jersey Avenue School, and my circle of friends expanded to include the Bungalow Park crowd, which included black people who could be considered middle class. Some of them had big houses and big money. I would get invited to their parties, and many times I would get teased because I was from the inlet. And theoretically, I was below their standard. They had a show on TV around this time called The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and the star and the co-star, Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin, they always wore these long white trench coats. I also had a long white trench coat. But the kids used to tease me and call me the man from poverty. Still, I learned to mask my feelings of less thanness behind my musical and intellectual abilities, which always got me in the door. Many nights we would stand on the corners in Bungalow Park, drinking wine, smoking weed, and harmonizing. Bungalow Park had some of the prettiest girls, and some of my closest lifelong friends grew up there. Mom and Dad were completely unaware of my outside activities, and I still played the role of the good son at home. However, my little brother Mike now was a loose cannon, so I had to keep most of my activities concealed from him so that they wouldn't get back to Mom and Dad. We attended church at Community Baptist Church on New Jersey Avenue. Now, Dad was the assistant pastor there to a man named Reverend Morris. I used to sit next to Mom, but Reverend Morris used to push the young boys to the side and said, "Don't matter what you did on Saturday night, wash your penis off and come to Sunday school and church on Sunday morning." Then he would wink at us in a conspiratorial way. I never forgot that. His daughter played the piano and ended up getting pregnant by one of the choir members, who just happened to be already married to another one of the choir members. Never forgot that either. Once I almost drowned on a beach in the inlet section where there was no lifeguard. In fact, swimming in that area had been banned after the storm. But we did it anyway. I jumped off the boardwalk and got caught in an undertow. And as I struggled to reach the surface, I became mesmerized by the light being diffused through the water. And I stopped struggling and was totally at peace with just enjoying the light. And suddenly I was back in Community Baptist Church with my mother, at least in my mind. Needless to say, I was rescued. A lifeguard ran from 3 beaches over to save me. But I will never forget the profound sense of peace I felt once I stopped struggling. Things that make you go, President Kennedy had just gotten shot, and everybody everywhere was affected. In fact, everybody I knew had a picture of President Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Jesus in their homes. I was in school when they announced that he had been shot and killed. That was when I wrote my second poem. I don't remember all of it, but it started like this. There is a man that we all know who died from a sniper's deadly blow. Yes, this is the man that we all know, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I don't remember the rest, but once again, my teachers were impressed, and they posted copies everywhere. And in fact, the copy made its way to the John Fitzgerald Kennedy Memorial Library. And I was sent a letter of commendation and thanks. Even though I had been moved to a private school, I still remained in the top 3 academically, and Janet and Patricia still were my nemesis. Me and my closest circle of friends were at the age where we started wanting to become intimate with the females. But outside of Bonita, I was still a virgin. However, I did experience my first ejaculation around this time. I had just awakened from a deep sleep, and I had a very powerful erection. I had never felt anything like this before, and it felt so good that I just had to touch it. And when I did, blam! This hot, sticky fluid went everywhere. And my penis went into convulsions. But it felt really, really good. Anyway, this was my first ejaculation. And I guess it was my first wet dream. Sometimes at lunchtime, we would go over to a friend's house whose parents were at work, and we would make sandwiches, bologna sandwiches and cheese sandwiches. Lots of us did this, and I remember one day some of my friends were playing with a gun and it accidentally went off, killing another boy. Some of my other friends who were there tried to stick an arrow into the wound and then tried to tell the police that he had accidentally got shot with a bow and arrow. How stupid we were. Anyway, I got a friend, and let's call him Ra, who used to come to my house after school. He got sent to jail for that murder, and when he finally got out again, after about 10 years, he got sent right back again for armed robbery. Life at times can be quite cruel. That could have been me. Ra was a good friend. He was no different than me. I thank God every day for mercy and grace because that very easily could have been me. Now, drugs started becoming more and more a part of my existence at this point, mainly marijuana. And a nickel bag, $5 worth now, could last you all week long. You could get about 30 joints out of a nickel bag back then. Life was good.